Hi, I'm Meg. Welcome to Change Becomes You, the space where we explore the true power behind lasting change, your unconscious mind, the supercomputer within you, the part of you that creates healing, abundance, safety, clarity, and deeply meaningful relationships, often before your conscious mind even catches up. When I learned how to work with my unconscious mind instead of against it, everything changed. I moved from contract work as an organizer into building a multi-six-figure business from the ground up, guided not by force or hustle, but by alignment, intuition, and inner authority. Here's what I want you to know. You already have everything you need inside you. Nothing is missing. You don't need to become someone else. You need to understand how you're designed to operate. This podcast is your invitation to remember that. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to Change Becomes You, the podcast. I have so much that I want to talk about today. You're going to have to excuse my voice. I've been fighting an illness for the last couple of weeks and I'm just getting back on my feet. So my voice is still a little bit hoarse. But I had all of this clarity come in yesterday and I really wanted to dedicate a podcast to it. So let's dive in. I want to talk about something that I see every single week in my practice. And the question really is, why do smart women stay stuck? Stuck after a diagnosis, stuck after a divorce, stuck after a major life change, stuck in burnout, stuck in anxiety. Why does this happen? Because it's not for lack of motivation. It's not logical. It's not lack of intelligence, right? It's not lack of capability. We know this. It's not because women aren't trying hard enough. Lord, do we know that? In fact, most of the women who find me are some of the most capable, intelligent women that I've ever met. They're successful, they're thoughtful, they're responsible, right? They're usually overdoing in their lives. They've spent decades taking care of everyone else. And yet somehow they find themselves stuck, right? This is interesting. Why? Maybe it's after years of putting themselves last. Maybe it all collides when they've developed a diagnosis. Maybe it's after a major life change, like a relationship ending or a divorce, right? Something happens. And suddenly, the woman who used to handle everything doesn't feel like herself anymore. She starts second guessing everything. She loses her confidence. She starts living a smaller version of herself. And then she starts to become afraid to trust herself. And from the outside, it can look really confusing because everyone around her still sees a capable woman. But inside, everything to her feels different. And today I want to explain why that happens. And more importantly, how women begin finding themselves again. Because this conversation is so much bigger than healing. It's bigger than anxiety. It's bigger than confidence. This conversation is truly about freedom and autonomy. And I believe freedom is one of the most important things that a woman can build for herself. Freedom in her body, freedom in her emotions, freedom in her finances, freedom in her decisions, freedom in her future. Because the truth is this, when a woman loses trust in herself, she slowly loses access to all of those things. And that is exactly why the work that I do is so critically important. Not because, hypnosis or clinical hypnotherapy is magic or magical thinking. It isn't. Not because there is something wrong with you. And one of my pet peeves is social media is so much about advertising. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that can be really beneficial. But you have to have so much discernment because what I see out there are people saying, I'm going to hypnotize you and everything's going to be changed in one go. and then you'll thank me and I'll build my business around it. And that drives me bananas because that couldn't be further from the truth of what's happening. And it's not about appreciating and crediting their work. It's about you recognizing what's been missing for you, right? Not because there's something wrong with you, but because most women have never been taught how much their subconscious mind is influencing their lives. We aren't teaching this in school. Personally, I would love to see a complete reform in the education system where we are teaching kiddos about their emotions and about managing their emotions and about emotional maturity and about their subconscious mind and how that everything that they truly believe in goes in like an instruction, and your body is that biocomputer that just runs the program. Most women, they're trying to solve subconscious problems with conscious effort. And that's why it rarely works. So let me give you an example of that. A client came to me after a health diagnosis, and she had spent years being the strong one in her life, the dependable one, right? The caretaker, the woman who could handle anything. And you know how we treat people who are efficient. We give them more, right? Give it to the busy person because they're the one getting it done. So she was the woman who could handle anything. And then her body started speaking a different conversation. Symptoms started appearing. And then doctor's appointments started increasing. And fear and anxiety increased. And eventually she found herself trapped in a cycle she couldn't seem to escape. And at that point, every sensation starts to feel threatening, right? Every symptom starts to feel catastrophic. And every day starts to feel uncertain. And she's losing a little bit more of herself each day. And what made it even harder was that to her, she knew it didn't make any sense. Right? She knew she was intelligent. She knew she wasn't irrational. She knew that she should be able to think her way out of it. And I really don't like to use that word should for that reason. But she couldn't. Because the problem wasn't intellectual. The problem was subconscious. The subconscious mind has one primary job: protection. That's it. Protection. And when something frightening happens, the subconscious begins making these expectations, these predictions. It starts scanning and asking, how do I prevent this from happening again? How do I keep her safe? How do I make sure she survives? The challenge is that the subconscious often solves for safety, not for freedom. And I really want you to hear that. It solves for familiarity. It solves for certainty. It solves for protection. And that's where women get stuck. Because eventually what once protected them begins limiting them. So the woman who learned to stay quiet to avoid criticism becomes more and more afraid to be visible. The woman who learned to care for everyone else forgets how to care for herself without feeling guilty. The woman who survived difficult relationships becomes afraid to trust. And the woman who experiences illness becomes afraid of her own body. And years later, she starts to think, like, why can't I move forward? Why do I keep repeating this? Why do I only get so far and then it all collapses? Why do I know what to do, but either it's not working or I don't do it? And the answer to that is because knowledge is not the problem. Subconscious programming is. And that is why information alone doesn't create transformation. You can read all the books, right? You can attend all the big events. You can take all the courses and still find yourself trapped inside the same emotional patterns. Because information changes awareness. Subconscious work changes identity. And identity changes behavior. And this is where everything begins to shift. One of the things I wish more women understood before they ever sit down in my office is this. The breakthrough that they're searching for is almost never something they need to create. It is always something they need to uncover. Because underneath the anxiety, underneath the self-doubt, underneath the overthinking, underneath the burnout, underneath the fear of being seen, speaking up, charging more, trusting again, starting again, or believing in themselves again, there is already a healthy woman underneath that. There's already a capable woman underneath that. There's a body that knows how to heal. There is already a wise woman there. There's already a confident woman there. There's already a woman who knows exactly who she is. But she doesn't feel like that right now. And the challenge is that over the years, layers and layers of protection have formed around her. And those layers are not random. They were created by a subconscious mind that was doing its best to keep her safe. This is why I see so many women who have spent years trying to fix themselves. And like I mentioned, they've read the books, right? They've attended the workshops. They've taken the courses. They've filled journals. They've done the mindset work and the affirmations. They've spent thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars searching for answers. Yet they still find themselves reacting the same way. The same pattern, the same fear, the same hesitation, the same emotional pain, the same relationship patterns, the same anxiety, the same inability to fully step into the life they know that they are capable of. And often they come to me believing something is wrong with them. But what they discover is that nothing is wrong with them. The subconscious simply learned to prioritize protection over possibility. Let that land. Because protection is powerful. Protection can look like procrastination. Protection can look like perfectionism. Protection can look like people-pleasing. Protection can look like chronic anxiety. Protection can look like never asking for help. Protection can look like staying in relationships that no longer fit. Protection can look like shrinking your voice. Protection can look like hiding your gifts. Protection can even look like physical symptoms. The subconscious mind is incredibly creative when it comes to keeping us safe. And the fascinating thing is that the subconscious rarely brings something forward before a person is ready to resolve it. This is something I've witnessed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. A woman will tell me, I never thought about that memory before. I don't even remember that. Or I haven't thought about that in 30 years. I don't know why this suddenly feels important. I hear this all the time in session work. And what I often explain is that the subconscious has extraordinary timing. We are talking about divine intelligence here, right? This is the intelligence that built you. It knows every cell that created you. It organizes all of it. And for years, it may keep certain experiences buried beneath your awareness. Not because it's punishing you, not because it wants to keep you stuck, but because it understands something extremely important. Awareness without resolution can be overwhelming. Understanding without support can be painful. And remembering without healing can sometimes even re-traumatize. So it waits. It waits until there's enough safety, enough support, enough capacity, enough resources, enough readiness. And then it gently begins bringing it forward. Not to hurt you, to serve you, to help you heal, to help you expand in your ability to receive. Because it knows the road that you want to travel. It knows every thought you have. Its job was to take in every single experience of your life and create memories and file those memories. And now it has association points. It knows the dream. It knows the road you want to travel, the life that you want. And it knows that the current belief model that you carry is not congruent with that road. And I think this is one of the biggest misunderstandings in personal development today, because we live in a culture that encourages endless self-analysis, endless consumption, endless learning, because people become incredibly knowledgeable about their wounds. And I do believe, personally, that we should continue to study. We should continue to evolve consciously. I think it's really wise that everyone have a mentor. I would think it's really wise that everyone work with someone that they trust. And knowledge is power. Learning about our patterns, understanding why we struggle. But there is a line where we can get stuck in that looping, where we know our patterns, we know our attachment style, we know our childhood history, we know our trauma timeline, we've read the books, we understand the theories, but nothing has changed. And there's still suffering, because awareness alone does not create the resolution. And there's nothing more frustrating than opening a wound and not knowing how to close it. There is nothing more discouraging than attending event after event or workshop after workshop, training after training, only to leave with more awareness but no lasting change. There's nothing more exhausting than understanding your patterns intellectually while continuing to live them emotionally. This is where personalized subconscious work becomes so valuable, because every woman is different. The same symptom rarely comes from the same cause. I see this all the time. In my practice, 2 women can experience anxiety. One woman's anxiety originated from growing up in a very unpredictable, unsafe household. Another woman's anxiety originated from years of carrying responsibility for everyone around her. 2 women can struggle with visibility. One fears criticism. The other fears success. 2 women can struggle with receiving money, and one associates wealth with guilt, and another associates wealth with loss. The surface behavior may look identical. The subconscious reason is often completely different. This is why generalized solutions frequently fall short, and why personalized work is so transformative. When women begin working with me, they're often surprised by what emerges. Not because I'm putting ideas into their mind, but because their subconscious is finally revealing what it has been protecting. Because she has the support. She has the resources. She has the ability now to not just re-traumatize by bringing it up into awareness, but actually bring it through a breakthrough, through transformation. And when that happens, the pieces all start making sense. The anxiety suddenly has a history. The fear has a purpose. And the self-sabotage suddenly becomes very understandable. The body symptoms have context now. The relationship patterns reveal their origin. And perhaps for the first time, a woman stops fighting herself, because she finally begins understanding herself. And that's a profound moment. Not because she becomes someone new, but because she realizes she was never broken. The subconscious was simply protecting an older version of her, which is a younger version of her. The old identity comes from the younger version of you, and it gets trapped in time. From experiences that your nervous system was too young to handle, your emotional intelligence and maturity was too young to manage, so your intelligence did exactly what it's supposed to do. it hit it, it buried it, and then it won't let you get anywhere near it again. That's when it looks like sabotage. But now, when there's resources, when there's support, when there's someone like me that can blueprint it and put it together, then she becomes different. Then she's stronger, she's wiser, she's resourced, she's supported, she's capable. And the subconscious begins recognizing that too. And this is where healing really starts to accelerate, because healing is not about endlessly revisiting the past. It isn't. Healing is about helping the subconscious understand that the danger is over, that the lesson has been learned, that she grew, that she evolved, that she became, that she no longer needs the same protections. And once that happens, that's when remarkable things begin to unfold. That's when confidence starts to really reemerge. Not that forced performance confidence, natural, internal identity work. The kind that comes from knowing who you are. Then boundaries become easier. Decisions become clearer. Relationships become healthier. Opportunities become easier to recognize. And most importantly, in my opinion, a woman begins trusting herself again. And I have watched women recover parts of themselves that they thought were gone forever. Women who thought they had lost their confidence forever. Women who thought they had lost their creativity forever. Women who thought they had lost their joy forever. Women who thought they had lost their purpose. And I don't like to use that word because it's such a generalized word, but the unique skills that a woman possesses that gives her so much pleasure to share them with other people, whether that's monetized or not. It's still what gives her so much joy in being here and how she contributes. Women who thought they lost their power, gaining it back, only to discover that, right, that those parts never disappeared. She didn't create them out of thin air. They had been buried beneath years of protection. And once the protection is no longer necessary, those parts naturally rise to the surface. Not because they're created, because they're remembered. And I believe this is one of the most beautiful aspects of this work. Is it's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully yourself. The woman you've always been. The woman underneath the fear. The woman underneath the anxiety. The woman underneath the diagnosis. The woman underneath the over-responsibility. The woman underneath the heartbreak. The woman underneath the exhaustion. The woman who has been patiently waiting for enough safety, enough support, and the right environment to emerge again. And when she does, everything begins to change. Because once a woman starts rebuilding trust with herself, that's when incredible things start to happen. That's when her body relaxes, her nervous system regulates, her mind quiets. She stops needing everyone else's approval. She stops abandoning herself, stops betraying herself, stops living from fear, and starts making decisions from clarity. And I want to talk about wealth for a moment, because I think this conversation really, really matters, especially today. I believe that every woman deserves the ability to support herself, not because she has to do everything alone, but because autonomy matters. Options matter. Choice matters. The ability to make decisions from desire instead of desperation matters. I see so many women unknowingly carrying subconscious beliefs that prevent them from creating wealth in their life. Not because they aren't capable, but because their subconscious associates visibility with danger, success with pressure, money with conflict, power with rejection. So they work hard, really hard, and then wonder why they keep hitting invisible ceilings. And again, the problem is rarely ever strategy. There's a whole conversation to be had about how to monetize your gifts, but that's not what I'm speaking about in terms of this conversation. The problem is often what the subconscious has learned to expect. And expectation quietly shapes your reality all day. Scientifically, 90% of the day. If your subconscious expects disappointment, it prepares for disappointment. If it expects rejection, it prepares for rejection. If it expects struggle, it prepares for struggle. Not because it wants to hurt you, but because it wants to protect you. So the beautiful thing here is that the expectations can change. These are not truths for the rest of your life. This is programming that was learned and compounded over time. That all needs to be reframed. Patterns can change. Identity changes all the time. Thank goodness for that. We don't want to be the same people we were in high school. Wouldn't that be awful? Aren't you glad you've evolved beyond that? And I have watched women transform their health, transform their business, transform relationships, transform their confidence. Not because they became different people, although it feels like that. It's so subtle. And then I always hear from my clients later when something happens, they're in a circumstance, and the way they respond, the way they show up, the way they process it, the way they perceive it is so entirely different. That's when they have the awareness. That's when they text me and they say, oh my God, I was just here. This just happened. This is amazing. Now I really see it. I'm not who I used to be. That's when you notice. But it's subtle because what you believe about you just feels like you. So we don't actually become different people, but our identity changes. And we stop fighting ourselves. And you start partnering with yourself in a completely different way. And that's at the heart of the work. Is I don't believe that you need fixing. I don't believe that your subconscious has ever been trying to punish you. I know for a fact it hasn't. I believe that it has always been trying to help you. It is always in service to you, even when the strategies no longer make sense. The goal isn't to overpower it. And that's where it's so misconstrued out there. Like, I'm just going to do something in your mind and you're going to be this different person and like Shazam and thank you, where's my $1,500? And off you go. And they walk away with no autonomy, no power. You did it. You get all the credit and accolades. That is not it. The goal is to work with it. The goal is to understand how extraordinary you are. This is why I champion women. I don't need any more people out there telling women their value while they take all the credit for them. That's just a thing for me these days. I'm seeing so much of, and it really bothers me. The goal is to create a new relationship between you and you. That's the goal. To teach it that the future no longer has to be built from old fears. And if you're listening and that's really resonating with you and you're starting to realize that maybe you've been carrying more than you thought, maybe you've been living in survival mode longer than you realized, maybe you've been isolating and hiding and shaming yourself and not talking about this, maybe you've been waiting for confidence before taking any action, maybe you've been trying to think your way into a life that actually requires a deeper shift, there is a place for you to begin. And it's called the Foundations Library. And it's on the website, magadamsonhypnotherapy.com. And the first point, the first entry point is called The Lighthouse Within. It is completely free. You can download it at any time. And I designed it to be the doorway that I wish more women had. I wish I had when I was ill. There wasn't anything like this. This isn't another course. It's not information. It's an experience. It's a place to start rebuilding trust within yourself. A place to begin creating a different internal environment for yourself. And I recommend spending a few days with it. Just listening to it for a few days in a row. Listen, reflect, let your nervous system Begin to recalibrate. Allow yourself to experience it. And then the next step is moving into return to safety and then into the inner yes. These experiences were intentionally designed to build upon one another, to create momentum, to help you begin changing the patterns that information alone cannot reach. And if you know that you're ready for deeper work, the kind of work that requires a personalized roadmap, the kind of work where your subconscious mind reveals exactly what's ready to shift for you, that's where one-to-one work becomes incredibly powerful. Because the recording can help you regulate your nervous system, but it doesn't replace customized work. Precision guided subconscious work designed specifically for you. I spend hours in session with clients and then blueprinting and mapping and thinking in their files and bringing it back and understanding the timeline, learning because I speak the language of the subconscious mind. These aren't parlor tricks. This is deep inner identity work. Because the truth is, you were never meant to spend your life trapped in fear. We just didn't learn about this. You were never meant to spend your life doubting yourself because you have trauma in your past. You were never meant to spend your life disconnected from who you are and the dreams that you have. And the world isn't the reason for it. Let's clarify that. Now, that doesn't mean we discount what's happening in the world, but if we're afraid of it, it just piles on more anxiety. That is not the road. If you're waiting for all of the circumstances to change before you can be okay, that is a very long wait. You don't need that. But you need to understand why your subconscious mind is creating the environment you're currently trapped in. And when you start to understand that, then we start to change that. And as it understands that change, everything recalibrates. Everything reorganizes around that new identity. It's not doing it to hurt you. If there's one takeaway here, it's that it's doing it to protect you. All of it is in service to you, all of it. So this isn't about needing more effort, needing to put in more effort, needing to struggle just one more year, just 6 more months, just 10 more years, they disappear. This isn't about that. So if the next chapter begins, let it begin with a new decision to stop fighting yourself and start partnering with the most powerful part of you. Let that be the beginning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having this conversation with me. I value them tremendously. I would love your feedback. If you have a comment, if you are experiencing something, if you have questions, just post them as a comment. You can, wherever you're listening, whether that's on YouTube or on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. And until next time, I want you to remember something. Change doesn't happen because you have to force it. Change happens when who you are becomes stronger and more intelligent than who you were. And eventually, that change becomes you. It becomes your identity. Thank you for being here. See you next month.